I'm Kat Cunningham. I'm a teacher with AmeriCorps here at Imagine Art. We imagine art. And one of the things that you need to do as an artist is you need to learn how to be able to see and take an idea and move the idea forward into whatever type of art you want to do. So basic design is important because it's what you call a foundation principle. And there's all kinds of foundations that we are going to pay attention to. This particular video is really about getting you started with what we used to call a sketchbook. We called it sketchbook a long time ago because that's all we really did was sketch in it, which is to just draw. But now, because of the growth for mixed media, now we're calling them journals. So what we've got today is the idea of what do you do with a idea journal. I brought lots of different kinds. Your class will have a specific kind based on your teacher, and I know mine does. But right now I just wanted to show you there's a wide variety of being able to work with an idea journal. And the reason I used to call it a junk journal is because you put all your junk in it because you want to be able to remember things. One of the fun things about having a journal, and in my class, the basic design is a requirement, is because it gives you what's called muscle memory. You learn to work with your hand and your brain at the same time. And you might have heard the old saying, practice makes perfect, and that's exactly what happens for an artist. Some of us have been doing art for a long time, and we have 15, 20 beautiful journals that we are always keeping close to us, because you know what? They become treasures. They become so important to us. A journal actually freezes an idea in time. It becomes your experiences. And as we go through, I'm going to show you what that actually means. So I have some different kinds of journals here, and you can do absolutely anything. If your journal pages are not real thin, because markers will go through on the other side if they're thin, but you can get thicker ones. I like the ones that are about 140 pound or in the 80-pound range. That makes it the thicker paper. And with it, you can work with a brush and watercolor, not too much water, mostly more color and a little less water. Because remember, you're just doing an idea. You're not doing finished art in a journal. So this particular one is a sample of ideas that I wanted to do for a landscape. And I didn't do just one. I tried about 6 different kinds. And then I figured out what are my color schemes going to be. So then I went in with my acrylics and a brush, and I put in some different color schemes. Now, if I want to go back a year from now and wonder what colors I used, all I have to do is go to my journal and find it. So you can work with acrylics very well. This, because I was a textile painter and designer, I tried out different kinds of fabrics. All I needed was glue to glue down the fabrics after I did some stenciling or some painting or some dyeing on the fabrics. And I put it in my journal, but I made notes with it as well. You can see these are all pieces of fabrics. Why not put fabrics in a journal? It works really well. Another thing that you can do is you can just take notes, but make sure it's not junk. This is something that's so special that it, as we said earlier, it freezes time. So if you have a thought, you have a poem, whatever you have that you are thinking at that moment, or you just have an idea, maybe you're in the grocery store and suddenly you get this great idea. When you get home, you put it into that journal because it's there forever. And notice that what we really like as artists are the new comb binding ones. The ones that you tear out, it's a little too easy to get rid of things that you don't like. So that just shows you one kind. And this is just using a marker and a ballpoint pen. I like black ballpoint pens personally, but you can use a blue one. This day and age it's kind of hard to get blue ones. Right? And I like this leaf, so I put this real leaf in there and I just taped it down. So tape is a real important part. This is a different kind of a journal. This is more one you might take on a trip, because notice this particular journal has a great place for a brush. This is one of my favorites. I was traveling, living abroad for a year in Australia, and I didn't have anything except a way of getting a journal. So I'm just going to show you some of it. These are things that you can do. This is a thematic idea. I was living up in a rainforest, and this boxia, which is a very special plant and flower, only grows in Australia. And I thought, wouldn't that be interesting? So I took that very unusual flower, knowing my design principles of all my different lines, whether it's jagged line or spiral line, or here I used the spiral lines, I used vertical lines, I used horizontal lines, and I came up with these patterns just from looking at this particular plant. Now, what I was really doing with it is up there, ladies were up there, and they were doing eco dyeing. That's very earth-friendly dyeing using our leaves. And so I isolated the colors that I wanted with color break blocking, and the bird and the flowers and the clothing. I had a wonderful skirt, and I started hand painting it. So you can develop a whole theme. I like opening up my book and saving 2 pages together as a theme. You don't have to do that. Here's a fun thing. I saw this landscape that I really like because, see, it's just an idea. And it is, of course, somebody else's art, so you aren't going to copy it, but you're going to learn from it. So I took a little piece of tracing paper, pasted it on so that I could just see the idea of the design itself, right? Then from there, I thought, well, what could I do with that? Then I took oil pastels and I put them in there with the same kind of design and idea. I didn't have the browns I wanted, so I cut up magazine pictures and I put that in. You see, an idea journal can be anything. Anything that you can think about, you can do. So this just shows you a way. Now, if you're going to do oil pastels, I don't actually recommend it. It turned out to be too messy, but I didn't have the colored pencils I wanted. So you're going to have to put either a piece of wax paper there or a piece of tracing paper there so it doesn't ruin the rest of your journal. If you take a workshop, I took this workshop with this lady. This was her brochure, her picture, so I could remember it. These were some of the notes that took place on the dyeing of the fabrics in the workshop and some of the pictures from a magazine article. But notice it's thematic. It's got a theme to it, right? Let's say you have an idea. Well, I want to do a painting and it involves the sea. It involves oceans. Well, I was fortunate. I've lived 5 or 6 different places that had different oceans. This particular one that I really, really care about and like is more of a California. It's very light. It's pastel. There's a lot of sandy look to it. That's not the kind that I had here, which was in Australia, or if you were visiting the Bahamas. The color palettes change. And what I do to make it really easy with color palettes, I do color blocking. And all that is sitting down, cutting up magazines, finding solid colors, putting them together, right? So here's coral, and here's my color blocking, and here are my notes on the idea. So now I have something that's very thematic. So themes work really, really well. I went to a library and I looked up costume designing, and also based on my travels where I went. So here I put little drawings of with colored pencils and some markers, right? And I put them in, but I wrote notes about the people and the culture and why the colors are what they are. Because maybe a year from now or so, I might want to go back to it. In fact, I did go back, and looking at some of these designs, I ended up putting them onto my fabrics. I sat and drew from nature. Still, it's a sketchbook, it's an idea book, it's a journal, whatever it is. It doesn't matter what you call it, right? I had a lot of gum leaves, or what we call eucalyptus leaves, where I was living in Australia and California. And so I took the leaves, and it was fall, so they were still in pretty colors. I went in with my colored pencils, and I spent a lot of time sketching them. And the reason I did it is because I wanted to paint them onto jackets. I've got some jackets over here we're going to show you. And you can see I just did like a cutout of what the jacket might look like. With the idea of this, which was great, thank you. With the idea of this, we had different kinds of looks because of different cultures. If I wanted to do Southwestern, I would have done something more like this. Get that out for you. Because, now not everybody is this, but I am a textile painter and I do teach it with students. So you can see my coloration is very similar to my designing. And if I didn't know anything about Southwestern motifs, this particular one is the spiral and it is the Thunderbird, and I represented the land shapes, which are different kinds of lines that I learned with basic design, and that's what people will learn when they do that. But I made my references first, and that way I could do my research and figure out what things are. So you see, your idea journal can be a lot of different things to you. You can just find fun things in a magazine. When I went to a museum, I wanted to remember what I did, and I took a lot of different pictures, digital pictures, but it was more fun to basically look at what I had. I could print one off. These were the Aborigine designs from Australia where I was living. And here I have scraps of fabric that I tried paint on. And here I did a drawing of what that jacket would look like. But when I came back, I decided it wasn't going to be that. So I ended up doing this jacket. And again, this is just design. So I ended up doing this jacket here with this particular deer, actually. But the design started out with developing it as Aborigine. And then on the front, I thought, well, I really should, this is more Western, but I did add some of the patterns that the Aborigine colors were, and the land shapes were, and the lizard, and so forth. So from my journal came a little seed, a little idea of what I would do next. That's what's really important about your journals. Now, there's another way you can do it. There's a lot of fun things. So we've talked about themes. We've talked about general ideas, doing research. We've talked about going places, traveling. We talked about how I do color breaks, and basically you can just cut pictures out of a magazine. When you look at something like this, while I was in Thailand, these were the marketplaces in the early morning. When you look at something like this, the eye sees a lot, and there's no way you would be able to break that down and design it. So what I have is what we call our magic window, and I keep it taped to the front of my book, which is just a little paper with a square in it, and I can go now around in my book and find whatever I want, but see the colors better. See that? You can now see the colors a lot better. And from that, I was able to come up with, it looks like a lot of colors, right? But now I was able to come up with just 5 or 6 actual colors, that all of those colors are there, and that's all. But now I have something really special for remembering it. So you can see now what I meant when I said we're freezing time, we're freezing emotions, and your pages don't have to be perfect. If you are somewhere and you don't have a book, I was at a thrift store and found these cards that somebody cut up, which are just empty, made a hole in it, and this is a whole collage of my 1 year while I was in Bali and in Australia, and it's brochures, it's business cards that were fun, it's my thoughts of what was happening in my life, it's the rainforest, it's all of those things. So this could be a journal too. Some of it's on the back, some of it's on the front. and I filled it in with copy and type. And you see, anything goes. It's your journal. Your idea journal, because it has everything that has happened to you during that period of time. I always suggest that you put a date on your journal. I always date my pages so I can see when I'm going to go back to it. You can also take it to another class or another media and show them what you have. That way, that teacher or that individual working with you, that mentor, can say, oh, this is a great idea. Let's do it. And why did it happen? It happened because you created your idea journal. So, for the care and feeding of your journal, which is what this title is, the care is that it's so special you won't want anything to happen to it. And the feeding of it is anything you want to do. It feeds your heart, it feeds your desires, it can have photos in it, it can have whatever you want to have in it. And nothing is not sacred. Here I had an idea of a pod, and I went from the pod to creating a stencil for fabric, and then I thought, well, I like the way the pod looks with the drawing, and then I started looking at the connections to it, and when I did that, I saw jewelry. So you see, there's anything that you want to do is in your idea journal. And it's something to start to develop and keep throughout the period of time of you being an artist. And the more you work in it, the more you do in it, the more you're going and feed it carefully, the more you're going to love it, and the more it's going to be around to help you become a really good artist. Thanks for joining us.